Yeah. So he socialized with employees, was supportive, and maintained an extensive network of personal friendship with employees. However, Ben had a relatively weak concern for productivity, as was seen, right? And product quality. He was satisfied to maintain the same level of production. He did not set high performance objectives and quality standards. Ben used supporting and some aspects of team building, but did little to develop employee skills and confidence. He did not use much planning, clarifying, and monitoring. Ben delegated the responsibility for supervising plant workers entirely to his first line supervisors, but provided little guidance about what was expected. The case did not describe any active use of consultation by Ben, right? In contrast to Ben, right, Phil used a significant amount of task-oriented behavior, example, clarifying, monitoring, and operational planning. Phil set high performance standards, pressured people to achieve them, and checked closely on the performance. However, Phil had little concern for employees and did not hesitate to make decisions that cut costs at the expense of employees' benefits and jobs. Phil was low on relation-oriented behavior, such as supporting, developing, and team building. He was very directive and autocratic in making decisions and used little consultation or delegation. Right. So, in a nutshell, that answers question one from the text standpoint, right? As I said, I think you guys did I think you guys did a better job than how the text would have wanted. But again, the case was a short case, so, you know. All right, question two says, compare the two managers in terms of their influence on employee attitude, short-term performance, and long-term planned performance. And what I liked with some of you is, guys, you went into all three separately, which was great, right? In terms of subheadings I'm talking about, which was very good. So under Ben's relationship-oriented leadership, employees were satisfied with the company, right? As evidenced by the very low turnover in the plant, right? However, employees were not highly motivated and did not perform up to their capacity. Ben's plant had the second worst performance of the 5 company plants. And this is where I was talking about. We could have done what I would have done basically is do some benchmarking to find out what other plants are doing. And I'd also go into industry to find out what industry is doing, right? And then set my targets from there. Ben's plant had the second worst performance of the company's 5 plants. Phil's lack of concern for employees was reflected in a growing dissatisfaction and increased turnover among the supervisors and machine operators. Phil had a very short-term perspective on plant performance, which resulted in cutting expenses for development of human resources and maintenance of machines. He's the type of manager who makes a good initial impression based on the short-term indicators of financial performance, such as quarterly cost and production levels. However, the longer-term effectiveness of the work unit will suffer due to the decline in human and material resources. Unfortunately, by the time the delay adverse effects of Phil's actions become evident, he's likely to be promoted and off to another position, leaving the mess for his successor to face. Right? Where I think the text, in terms of their answer to the question, a little bit, I think could have done better. It says, if you were a manager of the plant, what would you do to achieve? Go ahead.
Excuse me, sorry to disturb you, because Kedar said we can let him in, please.
Oh, he's out again?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it says a better balance, obviously, and I think most of you picked up on that. A better balance of task and relationship behavior. You should blend the two to become a better leader, obviously, because you don't want to be a Ben, basically, because that's just horrible. People are just gonna. I mean, if I were Ben's boss, Ben would be out of there a long time. Wouldn't you guys agree with that? Would you allow Ben to run your plant if you own the business? Obviously
No,
not.
sir.
Exactly.
No, sir.
Yeah, he would have been out there a long time. I would even prefer, if I had a choice, I would take on Phil and just try and curb his style, basically. But Ben is looking for friendship, basically. You know, maybe he lacks it at home or somewhere else, but that's what he's looking for, to be the good guy, basically. And you see a lot of that in a lot of organizations, eh? A lot of that we see in organizations, where some supervisors just want to be the good guy. And particularly in big organizations where you have different departments kind of thing, you know? Yeah, so the plant manager should be supportive towards employees, but also exhibit task-oriented behaviors, such as setting challenging objectives and monitoring performance to ensure progress is being made towards achieving these objectives. It is better to delegate responsibility to supervisors, as Ben did, yeah, than to make all important decisions in an autocratic manner, which I agree, as did Phil, right? That's why the blend is important, right? But delegation without clear objectives and standards is ineffective. There's no evidence that either manager used important behaviors such as recognizing and rewarding, and I see where you guys, some persons included that, which I believe is important, because I believe recognition and reward is important for effective performance. Developing subordinate skills, consulting with subordinates, so I never did that, and inspiring a strong sense of commitment to task objectives. The investment in development of human resources and maintenance of physical resources affect long-term performance and should not be sacrificed for temporary gains in short-term performance. Right. Gian is not here, right? Gian, you here? No? I saw where Gian mentioned that she would set up a ad hoc team, but I believe everything is given to you in the case, so you know exactly what the issues are. You know, you could basically just go ahead and do what you had to do, and most of you guys had given me good responses to that. So in terms of the grades, I have the grades. There's no names to anything. I just put your student ID number, basically, along with the grades. So I can give you that today. And I did make 1 or 2 comments for some persons. Oh, what I did.
Sir, for the third question, where I have
Yes.
External monitoring, you would say that should be internal. When I say when I mentioned that among the 5 plans, you would have external monitoring to see their leadership strategies and policies and plans, and then you would replicate what they have done going forward with your plans.
That's benchmarking, which is what? That's benchmarking. But you said external, and I understand. For me, and that could also be taken as correct also. But you see, when I think about internal, I'm thinking about internal to the group of companies, the 5 companies, internal, right? And then, so you're not entirely wrong when you said external. You're thinking to the other companies within the group, right? But so you're not wrong. Let me say this clearly, quickly. But my interpretation of internal and external is, maybe I'm in one group of companies, so internally I want to check with the other group of companies, and then externally now I want to see what the industry itself, you know, is doing. Yeah, but no, that's as I said, everybody did pretty good, and you, I think you mentioned that, as you said, which was pretty good. I think the tense on some of the writing, because I know some of you write, well, most of you write very well, I must say, which is nice to see. Because I did a group, I must tell you, I taught, what was it, organizational behavior, I think it was one of those I taught. And I'm not casting any aspirations. Let's just say your writing, all you was writing is better than how they wrote. But then again, there were a group of students who had failed the course before. And so I had to bring them up, hopefully to get them to pass. And even two of them still fail. But you guys writing, the point I'm making is I like the way you guys write. So don't let me down with the rest of assignments, no? All right. And what I also like is that some of you guys, you cited references to your in your paper, which is always good. Always good. And the good thing for you guys is it's almost as if you're writing an open book exam because it's no face-to-face. So you have access to all the information out there. So that's a plus for you guys. Eh? It's a plus for you guys. So very good, guys. I said everybody aced this thing. And so I'm looking forward to the group assignments. Have you guys started? Not really?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Remember now I showed you the methodology that we want to follow. The quality of the decision important, right? The speed is important also. So all is, yes, everybody was all is. Yes, Ken, all is. And so for you guys in Fells, you know what that means. If you guys continue this trend, I'm going to have to do an anomalous report, but that's all right. It's important to me that I'm confident that you guys are all doing well. All right. So,
Don't get any ideas now for the test. Don't get any ideas now for the test to make it more difficult.
but I have to.
True, Georgia, true.
But I have to, Georgia, I have to. I mean, you know, it's like you're in a group and they're all getting 50. And then you set a little test the same way to make them keep getting 50. Now, man, I have to test you, I have to stretch you a little bit, what they call a stretch objective. So it might be a little bit more difficult. It might be 2 cases probably, or 1 case and some scenarios. But it should be a little bit more challenging. Remember, it's the first one, you know, so your first one, you know, we're kind of feeling out each other. You kind of seeing what it is that I like, you know, styles and all of that. So now I know that you guys can step to the plate. You know what I mean? So kind of step it up a little bit. But I mean, in all fairness, I mean, as I say, the test should be a true reflection of how well you know the material. And the good thing for you guys is it's open book. I mean, if it were at face-to-face, you probably wouldn't have open book. So it has to be a little bit more challenging. You agree?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I agree with that, but not
Oh,
because
sir.
you did well on the first assessment, sir. You're gonna step it up.
Sir, I
That's a
don't
little
agree.
concern.
Open book is the hardest test.
Sure, I don't.
No, but what it is, let me show you. Let me pause. Sometimes I don't like. Okay, so today basically we're going to look at charismatic and transformational leadership. And as you'll see that some researchers, and you notice when you read the book, they tell you a lot about the research that were done and some of the results. Now, some of the research indicates that a charismatic and a transformational leader is one and the same, but we will look into that. All right, so learning objectives is after we study this chapter, we should be able to understand the similarities and differences for charismatic and transformational leadership. We should understand how leaders, followers, and the situation affect attributions of charisma. Understand the traits, behaviors, and influence process included in each type of leadership. Understand the benefits and cost of charismatic leadership for followers and the organization, and understand how to inspire more follower commitment and optimism. So charismatic, I mean, charisma is a Greek word that means divinely inspired gift, such as the ability to perform miracles or predict future events, right? So some of the behaviors of a charismatic leader is that they're novel and they have an appealing vision. Anybody can think of any charismatic leaders that we have had in Jamaica? I mean, some of us are, well, I have one in mind, but some of us are a little young to remember who I'm thinking of. Anybody? A charismatic leader in Jamaica? And if not Jamaica, then extend it to the world, basically, and we talk about it. Anybody?
So I want to Adam Stewart, the same name? Bush Stewart's son. I'm not sure I'm missing something.
Obama.
Who? Obama.
Obama.
Yes, Obama. And
So also the lady from Barbados. What's her name?
Exactly.
Mia something. I don't remember.
Mia.
Yes.
Mia Martin.
Yes.
Exactly. No, these are great, to me, great leaders. And look how Mia Martin just came on the scene, but she is exceptional. I mean, did you guys have a chance to listen to that little clip that I sent you guys?
Yes, sir, I did.
You see can you relate to what she's saying and what is happening to us here in Jamaica? And
yes,
what
sir.
What are the effects of how our leaders dealt with it versus what she's going to do? You guys,
yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Sir, I believe that her and her thought process to it as a leader, she's doing it in a way where she doesn't stand to benefit from it. I see where like Jamaican leaders, they stand to benefit from
their decisions.
These actions. Yeah, I see where the Jamaican leaders, they stand to benefit from these actions of the bank. Because even when it was the election, I believe that these banks were some of the highest contributors to the campaign.
Exactly. Call in the spade for what it is, my brother. Call in the spade for what it is. You know, so when you're compromised, you know, it affects your decisions, some of the decisions that you can make. And I'm not saying any of our leaders are compromised. I'm just making the point because you talked about donations. So I'm just saying that when one is compromised, it affects how you make decisions. Some decisions are irrational because of that same being compromised. Yeah, but I mean, I just love this woman, the way she leads. I mean, she's a true leader, you know. Another person though, and I says your guys are probably too young to know about or must have heard of Michael Manley. You guys remember? You've heard about him?
Yes, sir, I've heard about him.
So you know, he was a charismatic leader. And that's one of the leaders that I can think about. I mean, I was a kid when he was leading, but when you look at some of the characteristic of a charismatic leader, you can see that he had a lot of those. I mean, he had an appealing vision. So let me just say that he's the one that brought in free education, good or bad, because some people question the free education, what it has done. But it allowed poor people, right, to be able to get an education back in the day, right? He had this thing about anybody who wants to leave can leave Jamaica. And then he had this slogan about 5 flights a day. Maybe that wasn't the best thing to do, but he was appealing to persons to say, look, we're going to turn this country around and anybody who wants to leave can leave. So maybe that wasn't such a good, you know, pronouncement, but he had that. But he appealed to the person's emotions and values, right? So the emotional appeal to values were there. You know, he's the one who came up with no bastard. You guys never heard of these things, no bastard, no day again, because you guys didn't do civics and social science anymore, right? So you wouldn't probably have heard of some of these things that he came up with. So he appealed to the poor people. You guys know what a bastard child is, right? Yes, no?
Yes, sir.
Right. So he
Yes,
appealed,
sir.
right. So he appealed to the sensitivity of a lot of people, right, who were in that situation. And he was very, very popular. I mean, he won the elections for a couple of years. Expression of confidence and optimism, he displayed that. So these are the characteristics of and behaviors of a charismatic leader. So he displayed that. Self-sacrifice. Yeah, the leader needs to show that he will be able to sacrifice his time, his money if he has it, and even himself to basically for the rights of people. Who was also a charismatic leader. And you might say, well, was he really a leader? Was Desmond Tutu? You guys must have heard of Desmond Tutu, right? He just died the other day.
Yes, sir, from South Africa.
Archbishop from South Africa, right? He was, even though he was an archbishop, but he had the stage. So he was always appealing to people for, you know, to come on board and get rid of apartheid, that kind of thing. You can say Nelson Mandela, who gave up a whole lot, right? He went to jail, right? Because of his values that he had, right? In terms of getting rid of apartheid in South Africa. So he paid, well, I'd say not ultimate price, because the ultimate price is death, but he went to jail for a very long time, right? You should have unconventional behavior and methods. So what they want to do is change things basically, so they're unconventional, and they should demonstrate exceptional abilities, right? Exceptional abilities in terms of being able to speak to large crowds, that kind of thing. So those are,
Sir.
Go ahead, yes.
So what about this name Oprah Winfrey? Would you consider her a charismatic leader? Because she's a leader in her own right.
Yeah, but you could say everybody's a leader in their own right. Everybody's a leader of their household also, right? I mean, if you have a household, I'm saying. But we're talking about leaders who are obvious leaders for rights and all of that. I don't think Oprah pushes any agenda, so to speak, if you know what I mean. Or you can tell me what agenda she pushes if you think she's a charismatic leader. Because remember, charismatic is one thing, but it must be a leader also. What is she a leader in? You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
No? Yeah, we're talking about leadership. So that's why I'm you know, emphasizing here leadership. All right. Yeah. So that's the charismatic leader, and there. We talked about all of this, the charismatic leader, but there's some things in here that are not. Let me see if there's anything in here. Communicating high expectations, optimism, and confidence in their followers. Modeling behavior consistent with the vision. So they walk the walk and talk the talk, so to speak. They manage the follower impression of the leader. And by managing the follower's impression, you just want to make sure that if you're talking about trying to lift up poor people, you don't always wear a suit, you know, a suit and tie. Sometimes you just dress down to be like the followers, so to speak. So you're managing the impression of you. You're not going to say, well, I'm aloof. You guys know the word aloof, right? Yes, no? So you're not above anybody. You're with them basically on this journey. And it's the same thing with building identification with the group or organization. So charismatic leaders use language that includes symbols, slogans, imagery, and metaphors that are relevant to the experience and values of the followers. Just talked about some of the things that he said, no bastard, no day again, 5 flights a day to Miami, who wants to leave? And that free education situation. I don't remember the slogan for that one, but yeah. So these are charismatic leadership behaviors. And we say and we'll see later that charismatic and transformational leaders kind of have the same characteristics. So if you don't see the characteristic for transformational leader, you'll know that you can double back onto the charismatic leader to get these characteristics. So there are some dysfunctional attributes of a narcissistic charismatic leader. And by narcissistic, we say the person loves themselves basically, as we said, and it's all about self. So there's positive and negative characteristics. So some of the dysfunctional attributes of a narcissistic charismatic leader is they fail to manage important details for the success of a project, right? They pay too much attention to superficial aspects of the job, right? Informal, impulsive leader actions create chaos and confusion. Autocratic decisions fail to use available expertise from others because they feel like they know everything, right? Controlling style of managing creates excessive dependence by others, creates disruptive rivalry among favored and unfavored groups of employees. So you don't want to have that. You want to make sure everybody's on an even keel when you're managing, right? You don't have no favorites. You make exaggerated claims of unique personal expertise and commitment. So you're not boosting yourself basically all the time, you know, but if you get ideas from other persons, then you need to at least say you got an idea from somebody and you're just using it basically. It's not yours. Make exaggerated claims for the success of leader decisions or actions. You don't want to just keep, again, boosting yourself for the decision that you make. So yes, it worked. That's fine. You can say, yes, we implemented this and it worked, but you don't have to say it over and over and over again, right? Claims credit for successful ideas and outcomes produced by others. You guys know anybody, any leaders like that? Takes credit for successful ideas or outcomes that were done by other people? No,
A lot of the bosses, sir.
Yeah, so when they go to meeting with them, with their other colleagues, they make it look as if it was their idea when it was actually you who told them. Yes, I agree. That is so, right? A lot of the bosses. Who said that? Georgia?
Anna, sir, and Alistriana.
Oh, Alistriana. Yeah, that is so. That is so. Alistriana, you mentioned, no, Jerome mentioned, I don't know why, well, he did. He mentioned Adam Stewart. Would you say he's a charismatic leader? Just as an aside, because you've worked in that industry.
No, sir, I said it based on my observation.
Yeah, but so I'm asking Alistriana because she has more intimate.
Sir, I wouldn't.
Yeah. No, I'm the same way. I was gonna say that, but I wanted to hear from you. But I don't think he's charismatic. Maybe he'll become charismatic over time because I think he's doing some of the right stuff, you know. So over time, but I think it's too early to say that though, Jerome. You know what I mean? I mean, his dad died, what, 2 years ago? And he took over the mantle. So let's give it some time to see if things will change, if his attitude will change. But I think I see him doing some good stuff for his staff, and that's, you know, that's important. But let's see him put some money into social programs and all of that. That's what, because he have a lot of money, right? So let's see them put some capital into social programs that will benefit the greater good of the Jamaican people. Let's see that, and then I can say he's charismatic.
Sir.
Go ahead.
Our former Prime Minister, Mrs. Portia Simpson Miller, would you classify her as being a charismatic leader?
I certainly would. And I don't know how that just slipped me, but yes, she's charismatic. She is charismatic. That's true. That is so true. Whether she's a good prime minister or not is another matter, eh? But I'm saying she was charismatic. And that's what brought her to the leadership, actually. Because it's not like her diction, because, you know, she always had the H issue, right?
Right.
Right. So it's her charismatic nature that brought her to the prime ministership. So yes, very good example. I think everybody here would have been around when she was prime minister. So yes, very good example. Thank you for that one. Yeah. Emphasizes positive events to distract attention from failing programs. So that leader does that. Sometimes that's done. Limit access to negative information about leader weakness and failure. They don't share that information when things don't go right. They don't share that information. Devalues and demeans critics and opponents of the leader. Wow. Uses unconventional, dysfunctional behavior that alienates some people. It's often absent from managing operations. Too many non-relevant activities, so does other things that are not relevant, and absent from the real situations that needs to be dealt with. Right? Oops. Sorry. My mouse giving me issues again. So there are some things that needs to be looked at for charismatic leaders. Look at the leadership situation, and we're gonna leadership situation, attributional ambiguity, the follower characteristic, and the interaction with leader. Now, the leadership situation here, we're saying charismatic leaders are more likely to emerge in crisis situations, right? So it's a crisis situation, they emerge as the leaders there. Even in the absence of a genuine crisis, a leader may be able to create dissatisfaction with the current conditions. So even if it's not a crisis situation, what we're saying is a charismatic leader can create dissatisfaction with current conditions, right? And simultaneously provide a vision of a more promising future. You guys get that, right? So let's just say, obviously this is not Jamaica we're talking about here, because Jamaica has so many issues. But say in a country like, where everything is fine then, I don't want to choose a country, but where everything is fine and a leader wants to emerge, what they can do, what this is saying is they create the dissatisfaction with the current conditions, right? And simultaneously produce or provide a vision of a more promising future, right? I'm not saying it's charismatic, but I know a lot of leaders do that. Opposition leaders do that all the time, right? Whether or not the situation is fine. And I'm not saying it's fine here in Jamaica, because it obviously isn't. I mean, when we talk about, let me pause this for a minute, because I think sometimes you have to look at some of these. When we talk about crime in Jamaica, this thing is going crazy. I mean, I don't know this Jamaica that we're presently experiencing. I don't know this Jamaica. We've become a morbid set of people, right? I think we talked a little bit about this last week. We don't. It's almost as if we're not our brother's keepers anymore. And the
No
young
values
people,
anymore, sir.
huh?
No values in society.
Exactly. We talked about that last week. There's no values. We have poor values and attitudes in our country now. And I remember PJ Patterson years ago had a program to bring back values and attitude, and it just died. Oh, here's Ingrid.
Sir?
Mm-hmm.
So did you mention you were going to pause the video?
I did. It's paused. So we can talk.
It's not paused. It's not paused.
Oh.
I'm still seeing recording.
Okay, let me. Recording. Yeah. Likewise, the leader may be able to discredit the old, right, accepted ways of doing things to set the stage for proposing new ways, right? The impact of unconventional strategies is greater when followers perceive that conventional approaches are no longer effective. And this basically was taken from your text. It was a little bit taken out from your text. Attributional ambiguity. Here we're talking about attribution of extraordinary ability to the leader is likely, right? So they have extraordinary ability, whether it's ability to solve problems, ability to speak openly and speak with authority. That's attributional ambiguity. But in contrast, it is not considered a necessary condition for a charismatic leader. Follower characteristics: the followers perceive that the leader's beliefs are correct. So whatever vision the leader puts out there, right, the followers perceive that the leader's beliefs are correct. They willingly obey the leader, right? They feel affection towards the leader. They are emotionally involved in the mission of the group or organization. By the way, you guys think of something that happened recently, which is just crazy. The situation with Montego Bay, with that church leader. Don't you think that's so ridiculous? Willingly obey the
much
leader.
so.
The cult?
Huh?
So the cult?
The cult, yeah. Because I don't think he was charismatic, but maybe he brought something to the fore that leaders, that there was a void there for a lot of people that the leaders weren't filling, or that the other churches weren't filling. Because when I look at some of the stuff that he said, horrible stuff, immoral stuff, yet people followed him. I don't know if you guys seen some of the stuff that he has come up.
Yes, sir. Yes, and it's still very hard to believe that he was able to have so many followers, because I don't think any well-thinking Jamaican would actually put themselves into that position, and I see it happen. So I don't know what to think.
Look at that woman who works at ATL. I don't think
Yes,
she,
sir.
you know, the one that was executed or killed, I should say. That's ridiculous.
Did he use something to cause a spell on them, sir? I'm not sure. I don't know.
No. So to be honest, sir, there are a lot of mad people in Jamaica in pink clothes. A lot of mad persons.
No, I wouldn't say that person was mad. No, sir.
Sir, I think they're just seeking acceptance and they found it there.
Sir, and it's not only that. So some people, like some churches, because them promise the people them riches and so forth. Everybody want riches, so them run it down and do all the things that just to get the riches.
How though? No,
sir,
no, Jerome, that's not answering. How? Tell me how that. We're talking about the followers now, you know. How are they going to get riches from the church? We're not talking about the preacher, you know. We're talking about the followers. We're trying to say how.
No, sir, it's not from the church, you know. It's based on what some pastors do. Sir, then quote the words from the Bible and they turn it up in their own words.
Oh. Okay, I hear you.
Just to mislead the congregation.
I have heard him say some stuff that is just any woman in that place would have walked out.
Right, sir. He was very rude. He was feisty. So I'm still at a loss. I don't
Exactly.
know.
That's exactly what I'm saying. It's exactly what I'm saying.
Sir, look at it from probably any other organization that you're in.
Yes.
Sometimes you're in an organization and people say and do things, whether you agree or not, and you stay. So when for me, what I think is that when they're there, because they view the pastor as their I don't want to say their
Messiah.
Their Messiah, or their gateway to getting where they want to go. So them follow them blindly, and I think that is what the problem is. So instead of trying to seek and find information for themselves, they blindly go wherever he says and do whatever he says because he knows and they don't. Or what that's their perception, or that's what they're.
I hear you, but I was going to say, are they literate? Because the utterances I hear the man saying, and we have women here, and so I dare not repeat some of the stuff, but the way he, boy, I don't know. I'm saying
It's puzzling. It's
But
puzzling.
sir, look at it this way. Look at even when a regular party, sometimes the songs say the same thing.
Yeah, but that's
The songs
different.
say
Though.
No, sir, but I'm just
Reggae
saying.
party is not trying to be moral. Or
sir, I get
uphold no high moral
I'm
standard.
just saying, it's just what you are, right, sir? But then that's the thing. Do they have that standard though?
Well,
That's the problem, you know, sir. What standard do they have for themselves? Because I mean, even the one that was killed, and she was almost completed the process of transferring all her insurance from her child and her mother to the church. So
Right.
it's like a whole of blind people.
It's nothing normal, Anna. That can't be
That's what I'm saying.
normal.
But the thing is a lot of them around, and it's not even here alone. It's a lot of them.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I mean, and we know in the States it's even worse. But the Branch Davidia, the Mormon, and all of those people, you wonder. You really wonder, but you know, it is what
Sir,
it is.
you have a group of guys that's always important town. That
Where?
the Port Antonio town.
Uh-huh.
They're graduates from UE, most of them.
Mm-hmm.
High scholars, and I don't know if it's the intelligence madam or whatever. I'm classifying them as mad because, even though they're not really, but they are so, everything for them is some form of conspiracy that if you really sit and listen to them, it's not that what they're saying, you know, don't have any basis behind it. But if you're not strong, will you follow them blindly?
Wow.
Because it's like whatever information they're coming to you with, and I suspect is the same thing with the pastor. He's giving you all this backup to support what he's saying. And people just follow him blindly without trying to find the information for themselves. And I think that is probably what the problem is.
Okay.
Most of us don't have a mind of our own.
I could put this gentleman, whatever I forget his name, as a charismatic leader.
Charismatic leader.
Having done that, I mean, I have to rate him for that. I have to rate him. I mean, say what we may, but I mean, you know.
Sorry, man, go in church and say, what's the lady? It's when the lady has counted, when say I can count never come in a church. This can't pay for you and your banger and pick them. I was like, okay.
That kind of talk, exactly.
I was like,
okay. Exactly. Why? It's well, and I think there's another cult. There are other cults in Jamaica, you know.
There's one. They're researching in St. Mary now.
Yes.
So to be honest, these are the things that is bringing a lot of things to light that has been hidden for years, because a long time something is happening in Jamaica and outside of Jamaica. So these are the time now that things are now coming to light, because some people, like when everybody call, they must say in Jamaica light is something new. It's not nothing new. It's been here for years.
Yeah,
now.
but no. But Jerome, it is new for people to be killing people, though. It is new. We've never seen
Yeah,
this.
the extent, right.
Guyana, remember in Guyana, where you guys didn't know, but they poisoned a whole heap of people in Guyana years ago with the same type of cult situation. But in Jamaica, it's never happened. Well, not from my memory or reading or hearing about it. It's never happened in Jamaica. So yes, you can say there were cults before, but not. They didn't take it to the extreme of sacrificing actual people. You know, they might have sacrificed animals and drank blood and all of that, which is nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with drinking blood. I remember when I was in university, I had a friend from Guyana, and he brought what's called a blood pudding. I mean, I couldn't eat it, but I had to taste it just to, you know, see what his culture was all about. But yeah. But we've never killed anybody, Jerry. We've never killed anybody. Not that I know of. If you know of it,
yes, sir. There was a case in St. Thomas where the wife, she beat her husband with the Bible to death, and she was of the belief that he would have resurrected within 3 days' time. So it happened before.
I've never heard it. No. Tell me that again. I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
Anybody else ever heard that?
Yeah. The name of Mr. and Miss Robbie, something of the sort, sir. But yes, in Halby and in St. Thomas. A couple of years ago, and she went to prison with her son. But they're out now.
She beat him with the Bible.
Beat her husband with the Bible, yes, sir.
Oh, boy.
To death.
All right. All right, so that is it where the followers' characteristics are concerned. And then obviously the interaction with the leader is they believe the leader and they follow the leader, basically, right? So here's where I was talking about the research now that we said earlier. It says types of research on charismatic leader. So different types of research methods have been used to study how charismatic leaders influence followers and leaders and the leader's organization or institution. The research methods include the analysis of biographical information about famous charismatic leaders, and we've mentioned a couple of those, intensive case studies of an individual charismatic leader, right? I guess one could be done with any of the leaders that we mentioned in terms of a study. Survey studies with behavior questionnaires and experiments in laboratory or in the field settings. Okay, so some of the findings from the research on effects of charismatic leaders, there are some negative consequences of charismatic leaders, where the followers are being in awe of the leader, and that reduces good suggestions by the followers, right? So they're in awe, so they don't believe that, you know, anything that they say will be better than what the leader is telling them. Desire for leader acceptance inhibits criticism by followers. So they want to be accepted, so they don't want to say anything to the leader that might be contrary to his beliefs or his saying. Adoration by followers create delusions of leader infallibility. So as if the leader can't make a mistake or can't do anything wrong, right? The followers adore him so much. And same thing that we were talking about. This is just listing the stuff, right? Excessive confidence and optimism blind the leader to real dangers, right? Blind the leader to real dangers. So maybe that guy, if we think about the one in Montego Bay, he had so much confidence and stuff that he was blind to real dangers because I think he had mentioned to his flock that they were to do the sacrifice, you know. So I mean, even the time between when he mentioned to them to the time when it even happened, are you saying that they never even give anything, any thought to the whole process? You know what I mean? As to what was going to happen? Yes, they thought he was infallible. Denial of problems and failures reduce organizational learning. Risky, grandiose projects are more likely to fail, right? Because they didn't put much thought into it. It's a grandiose project. Taking complete credit for successes alienates some key followers. So like you might have recommended something to your boss and he took all the credit and nobody knows it's even you or it was your idea, right? Impulsive, non-traditional behavior creates enemies as well as believers. Wow. Dependence on the leader habits development of competent successors, inhibits the development of competent successor. So you're just depending on the leader, you think he's going to be there forever, yet you don't create, let's say in the church, a deacon then who can take his place, right? Or a vice president who can take the president's place in that organization. And failure to develop successors create an eventual leadership crisis, obviously. So the leader gets sick, the leader dies, everything falls apart, basically, right? So that's what we're saying there. Implications for the organization. So although research on effects of charismatic chief executives is limited, so we're in the organization now, the available results suggest that charisma is not an essential attribute for their success and may even be detrimental for most of them. I agree with that. You don't have to be a charismatic leader in an organization. People don't have to love you. You just need to get stuff done, and be fair to people. That's how I look at it. Right, so you're developing people, you send them on training, you have good HR programs, that kind of thing, but you also have your task-oriented stuff also, and you'll be fine. Despite the adverse consequences found on charismatic leaders, they are not all doomed to fail. I don't know if anybody has or can cite any example of charismatic leaders who, as we looked at some of the adverse stuff, and they are still doing well. Anybody, any small company or any organization that you know of that have narcissistic leaders, as we said, and the organization is still doing well? Because it says here, despite the adverse consequences found on charismatic leader, they are not all doomed to fail. I guess sometimes if you own the business and you're that of a charismatic leader, then you would ensure that it doesn't fail by putting in some of the necessary task-oriented behaviors. Success is possible when the leaders have the expertise to make good decisions, the political skill to maintain power, and the good luck to be in a favorable situation. And by political skills here, we're not talking about just PNP or PNP. Remember, we're talking about an organization now, but political skills. So you know who to talk to, you know which vice president to talk to get your budget passed. You know, the vice president of finance, you have that political skill, you know, to get what you want, that kind of thing. You have the political skill to talk to the union delegate before a situation blows up. That kind of political skill we're talking about. All right. So we're on to transformational leadership, and there's not a lot of slides in here because we said a transformational leader is almost akin to a charismatic leader. So transformational leadership theory describes how effective leaders inspire, right, and transform followers by appealing to their ideals and emotions. So important are the leader behaviors, the influence process, and the leadership situation. All right, comparison of the charismatic and transformational leadership. So one of the most important issues for leadership scholars is the extent to which transformational leaders and charismatic leaders are similar and compatible. Some theorists treat the two types of leadership as essentially equivalent, whereas other theorists view them as distinct but overlapping. So even if they're not the same, at least some of the characteristics are overlapping. So even among theorists who view the two types of leadership as distinct processes, there remains disagreement about whether it is possible to be both transformational and charismatic at the same time. All right. So there are some other types of leaderships, minor types, which we just mentioned here, ideological and pragmatic leaders. So each type of leader can be effective, but they differ in terms of their traits, behaviors, and influence process. So the charismatic and ideological leaders are more effective in situations where there is a high level of political and ideological conflict, whereas the pragmatic leaders are more effective when there is little political conflict and more emphasis on constructive problem solving. By pragmatic, what do you think we're talking about here? We say pragmatic leaders. Anybody? So pragmatic leaders basically, they're realistic and practical rather than theoretical. They're practical, so to speak, comes from practical, right? So that's what the pragmatic leaders are, realistic and practical in their approach to things. So ideological leaders, right, are more likely to emerge when there is a strong culture of shared values, right? Yeah. And they can articulate a vision that embodies these values. So that's where the ideological leaders will likely emerge, right? We're a company that has a strong vision and strong culture, right? And you'll see this in countries like India, for example, and countries that are highly, how do you say now? Their religion, they're highly religious. So the ideological leader will do well there. Okay. Do you think Jamaica is a religious country, by the way? I'm just asking. In the main. Give me some comments on that.
Well, sir, we still have more churches per capita, so.
Yeah, we do have more churches and bars, but we have also more bars too, eh?
That's true.
Yeah, so you think we're a religious country?
I still think we are, sir. I still think we are.
Yeah.
Agreeing, sir.
Okay.
That just is to me more of a religious. Even when persons tend to use the Bible, tend to use religion, whether they are churchgoers or whether they are Christians, yes or no. There are many who believe in those values and principles and tend to teach it to others. And of course, the overarching one is that the Lord is alive.
Yeah, well, you know what I think though? Let me tell you the truth, what I think. I think in another 10, 20 years, I mean, I might not be around to see it, but I think if somebody comes after me and asks the same questions, things might change. You know, there's not a lot of people going to churches as there was in the past. Do you agree with that, yes or no? Or you think it's the same? I'm just asking the question because I don't know.
No, sir, I agree with that.
I agree.
Ingrid, what are your comments on that? Do you think there's less people going to church now than when we were growing up?
Oh yes, there are less people going to church, much less. In some cases, I've seen the churches, the building being turned to houses. I was passing a Jehovah Witness church the other day, and I was trying to see people living in there, and it's now a house. Someone bought the church and it's their home. And I went to a funeral some time ago, and we had to be the one who go in and clean out the church because the church was closed. They had no members per se. And as a student told me that she's a member of the Anglican Church, and she said in her era, only her and her sister are really persons in the under 30 age group in the church. And she mentioned that the others are all shut-ins. Most of its members are shut-ins. So they go to church, it's only like 5 of them. And now they have stopped going and the church door has closed. So people are not going to church as they once did. I don't know if education is the culprit for that, but it's not happening as one time. People are not scared of the pastor who preach hell and brimstone and fire for you. You know, in nowadays would be scared and people would run to the church. I think less and less people are scared. And then what you find out is that those with money, those with something in life, they don't find the church as important, and the church message too, I think needs to change because it tends to appeal to those who have less. The Lord will supply your needs. Lord will get you a job. The Lord will help your child, what have you. And so those persons are drawn to that message because there is this hope in their circumstances being better should they come. And the ones now whose circumstances are good, what do you tell them? A preacher from our church, he was in Cayman having, an evangelistic series, and he said, he was preaching, and one man come to him and say, I have a gold toilet. I sit on a gold toilet. What you going to tell me? You understand, to get me. And so the message has to be a little bit more universal. And sometimes the preacher wants some type of training. If you're really going to be a disciple for the Lord, that is not just bread and fish people follow God for.
Well, one of the things too, you know, is when you look at the pastors who actually preach, they are usually more affluent than their flock. I'm going to call the congregation the flock, right? So they're doing well out of the collections from the flock, right? So some people are now wising up to some of that kind. I remember, you know, my mother used to put money in an envelope and send to Oral Roberts. You believe that? You believe that crap? I'm serious, you know. Well, you guys don't do Oral Roberts, but yeah, go ahead.
There's this particular one. I went to this particular church, I won't call the name, but anyway. And they were giving a Christmas gift to the pastor and his wife, and he was extremely upset about the gift.
There you go.
And I'm saying, and even because like my workplace, the church itself, there's a set of apartments. I don't even want to call it apartments, some townhouses that were being sold in a particular area, and the church has 5. So when they came by, sir, this is like 15.odd million for one, you know, and the church has 5 of them. Because my workplace was called to do some installation down there. And you hear, oh, they want, because 2 is in this church name, and then this is in the you know, they have different things under the church umbrella, same church, but whether it is that, you know, this ministry or that ministry or whatever story. So you want 2 bills in this, you want 2 bills in that, and you want this one in. I was like, 5 of them, and apparently it's closed, you know. So because they said it's purchased for when people come from overseas, they have somewhere to stay. I was like, really, for $15 million? For one.
And there's some poor people in there who don't have, who when rain fall, them wet up, eh?
And them drive past them and go home.
Exactly. So I think
I've seen it. Some of them don't, but I've seen it.
Yeah. And so people are seeing these things and are wising up to a lot of these things that went on in the past. And I don't want to be like a blasphemer or anything, you know. I'm just saying that we have identified that there's less persons or less followers to the church now than there was in the past. If you look at the Catholic Church, when you think about what happened in the Catholic Church, how they abused boys, you know, because I'm sorry to go on this horizontal excursion, but I met with the Archbishop of Jamaica, nice guy, not a big man, but nice guy. I met with him because I was at a company that I was doing something, so I wanted the Catholic schools, the private schools, to come on board. This app that I created, right? So I met with him, and I mean, the man's educated, nice to talk to, and I said, you know, why? Because he recognized that the followers are falling off also. And I say, you know, part of it, you know, is this thing where the priest, right? In the States, they showed it too. And I believe in Italy, where they abused young boys, altar boys, that kind of stuff. So all of these things coming together to make people not as enthusiastic about the church as they used to be, right? A lot of these things come together. Then you see some of these pastors have, in the States, for example, have their own private jet, and they dress a certain way. It's not conducive to what we would have thought how Christians should live humble lives. They don't live that way anymore, right? So things are different, and people see that. See that.
Yes, sir. Sir, I think the respect, sorry, Ingrid, I think the respect that we used to have for pastors back then, it has totally changed. And I think that has to do with the behaviors of some of the pastors. When you look at pastors, they should be the one guiding the young children and so on. And they're in fact, sir, the ones who are having affairs with the kids.
Yes, of course. Of course.
Sir?
Go ahead.
Sir, as it relates to pastor, have you seen the latest headline read the pastor?
No,
at the bar, Jerry, and a lady with liquor in his hands.
No, I haven't seen that one.
Sir, another week. It's in this week, by the way.
Oh boy. And again, social media. Again, social media will do that to you, because I remember seeing something about a pastor what is it? What was it again? Something about oral sex to a pastor. I don't know what it was. And he said they forced him to do it. They held him at gunpoint. Which
Oh,
is not
yes,
true.
yes, sir. Oh,
I don't
that
remember
was
the whole
one there.
situation.
Yes, sir, that one.
Yeah. And he says they held a gun to his head and all of that.
Yes,
and it wasn't
yes.
true. Oh,
Sir,
boy.
he said it was forced.
It was, yes, forced.
It was
Yes.
forced.
Yes, that's exactly the one. That's the
It
one.
was
Yeah.
forced. So, but to be honest, so what I don't like with some of these churches and pastors, for example, one of your loved one passed, I made arrangements to keep the funeral at the church and so forth. Remember, you have to pay the church,
Yes,
you have to pay the organist.
Yeah.
And on the day of the funeral, when you're there mourning and you have supporters, just to support you in a time of grief, the church is still going to collect offering from you. I don't like that.
Yeah. That's not bad. I don't think that's so bad though, Jerome. I don't think that situation is so bad.
Sir, that is terrible.
No,
I don't think so, Jerome.
No, Jerome, sir.
Let me have my opinion.
As a Christian, there are certain things I think persons, and that is why people are following pastor instead of God. So what they do, what the pastor do is always when the pastor goes out of line, many flock, many are the flock, they fall by the wayside because all this time they were putting their trust in pastor who is a man and is fallible like anyone else. So the pastor who was gyrating with the liquor, he's a man. And so he has his own sin and demons that he's fighting. And so he was caught in that situation that ought not to be. So what you find out is that people should learn that you're not following pastor. You are following the scriptures. And there are times, even when we talk about the tithe pastor and your mother would have sent the money to Oral Roberts and so on, there are many persons who I believe in tithe giving, but once you give it, because the Bible says so, but once you give it, there are others who might misuse it. And you might talk about it, but because you follow the scriptures, then let them and them God have it. So that's what I see. That's how I believe. Now, when you come to church, and there are so many small churches that are not organized. So a one man is the leader, a one man collect the money, a one man go on with the money, a one man decide what must happen to the money, like we see in those big churches and small churches in Jamaica. So this one man is getting rich because the church has no structure. There is no. It should be organized like any other business, organized. And I am in a system that my pastor could never go near the collection plate. So, hear of it, it's not.
I don't believe you though. I don't believe that, Ingrid. I don't care what.
About what?
What denomination is that? If you don't mind.
I'm a Adventist. It is the third best organized system in the world. I am a Seventh-day Adventist, sir. And this don't happen. A board runs a church, not a pastor. Pastor is in charge of 6, 5, 4, 7 churches. So he goes someone to, but the church is under the supervision of the church board with pastor sometimes don't even have no vote. So he's paid by a conference, and then we have a division, and then we have a general conference over. And like every other, whether you're in a church with one, somebody or in there with 10 million people, you are paid from that system that is in place. So he is not allowed. There is a treasurer of every church, and he is not allowed. The only way I hear about the money is when we have a board meeting.
Okay, all right.
About what is happening.
I'm glad you said that, believe it or not. No, it's edifying to me.
Really organized. And we don't, when we collect and tithe is collected and so, it don't stay, and there's a percentage, and they tell you a percentage goes to this, it goes to that, it go overseas, it do this, it do that, and so on. So you at the local level has nothing. And when I think it's Jerome who spoke about the funeral. When there is a funeral at a church, what some people don't understand, the church, when we charge someone for a funeral at a church, the money that is charged is not much, because what happened is that somebody has to be paid to clean and to prepare that church for the funeral. And after the funeral, someone again has to be paid to clean again and to prepare that church again for church services. So you can't say come free. And that is left on the church members now to pay. And sometimes church members don't have it, to pay someone to clean because you are coming with your funeral, and to pay someone after you have.
No, I said, Ingrid, not to cut you, but I'm in agreement with that. I mean, I buried my mom a couple of years ago, and I had no problems with putting up a new sign for the church, and then collecting offering. And I know they did well because a lot of people came from overseas and gave offering. So I have no issues with that. But I'm glad, although we're on a horizontal excursion here, I'm glad you clarified that for me. But I know the Adventists, Seventh-day Adventists might be like that, but I'm sure most churches aren't. I'm going to make that in my opinion, clear, that I don't think most churches are like that. I believe most churches, the pastor has a say as to what is done with the collection. My opinion.
Not in our church, sir.
Okay, good to know. Very good to know, though, I must tell you.
Okay.
Good to know. All right, charismatic leaders appeal to their emotions, as we said, and articulate a vision that builds confidence that the leader can show followers how to resolve a crisis and overcome obstacles to desirable objectives. The pragmatic leaders are more likely to emerge when they are perceived by the followers to have the expertise. Remember, I said they're practical, right? That's where the word pragmatic comes from. They have the expertise and commitment necessary to guide the process of strategy formation and crisis management. I won't get into evaluation of the theories, right? And they looked at inspirational leader. Again, you might see the words that they're interchangeable, but you know that a charismatic leader, from what we've read, is the same, well, almost the same thing as a transformational leader, which will almost be the same thing as an inspirational leader. So when you're reading a text, just understand where we're coming from, even though the words are different. The betas are almost the same. So here it is, an inspirational leader is the same thing, articulates a clear and appealing vision, explain how the vision can be attained, act confident and optimistic, express confidence in followers, use dramatic symbolic actions to emphasize key values, and lead by example. So all of those inspirational, charismatic, and transformational leaders are basically, I would say, if not the same, then close to being the same in terms of their behavior and characteristics. And that's just the same thing as we read earlier, just now. All right, so that takes us out of this chapter. That was chapter 8, right? So we're talking about charismatic transformational leader in the main, basically, right? What time is it? We'll take a break, a coffee break, and come back, and then we'll move on. We'll move on to chapter 11, I believe. No, chapter 9. Let me see. Quickly. Right. Move on to chapter 9 when we get back from the coffee break. All right. So it's 10:30 now. Let's take a break, and we're back. I'd say a 15-minute break will be fine. Right, we were back at about 11:15. Let me just grab a coffee and move through. All right, guys. You don't have to. Yeah, I'll mute, but you can